It's a pleasure and honor to have a chance to interact with all of you. In many ways, I feel like I'm in the presence of my teachers. I feel like I'm in the presence of some learned scholars, and what I'm going to share today are my observations, and I hope they're received in the spirit of collaboration as some potential ideas that might help you think about the moment that we currently face. So let me go right ahead and into my slides. Um, yeah, I think as I started very briefly saying, all of us have had tremendous disruptions to our organizations as a result of COVID, and we have been very focused on the short term. We've been focused on business continuity, on remote instruction, on essentially keeping the lights on in the buildings and operations going on, while COVID took its toll. But what are some of the deeper, lessons that we all have to learn? And what are the fundamental disruptions that are coming or that are already here? Those are some of the things that I want to leave you with. At the outset, I wanted to kind of share with you this kind of transformation model that I've been using to think about how the business school itself is changing. The universities are changing, the students are changing, and the business world is changing. And with all of that, there's an urgent need for us to innovate, build partnerships, create interdisciplinary programs, and really create a new learner focus. And as always, the constraints are financial and the IT infrastructure. And the larger issue is how is it that we can work together to create a culture of innovation in our schools where we can truly learn about what's happening in the landscape and bring those learning to our students. So you have seen these kinds of frameworks before, but this comes from a study of KPMG, and it was featured by Microsoft in one of their educational resource bases. But all of us want to accelerate innovation. We want to create better programs. We want our students to be innovators. And yet we face a very complex landscape when we actually have to lead the institutional change necessary in order to create this innovation. And I think we have to be realistic about identifying the different things that have to change, for a truly innovative culture to take hold. And in particular, we have to find a way to redefine what it means to be a faculty member in our institution. The nature of the work model, the labor model has to change. The politics have to change. The mindset has to change. We have to, shift from, teaching a fixed curriculum to enabling discovery. And the skills gap. Our faculty are not as digitally skilled as we would like. Some institutions might be ahead than others. And always budget is a constraint because we have scarce resources and we have to figure out where that has to go. But we have to stay committed to innovation and really find a way that we can bring innovation and make it work in our organizations. Because what is happening is we are all going to create AI ready cultures in the coming years, the next 5 to 10 years. And the big things that we're going to be thinking about is how do we really use data across our organizations to inform student learning? And how is it that we can ensure that we build the systems that are listening to the students on a continuous basis? We want this to be empowering and inclusive and responsible, which means that we have to think about AI ethics, but we also have to think about ways by which we are providing resources that are adequate and everybody is being listened to while we drive this change. So there's a massive change management project that all of us will be forced to undertake. So with that, I wanted to leave you with kind of 3 trends that I'm seeing in business education. The first one is hybridization. I've talked about 3 different phases of instruction that we can see coming. We already have done remote instruction where you have synchronous education where the faculty member is present and is presenting information to students who might be all over. This is remote instruction. It is not online learning. What is next is what we're now talking about is hybrid and blended instruction. This is most commonly what is happening in most business schools I'm familiar with in the United States, where as soon as the initial phase of COVID has taken its toll, people are coming back to campus, and we have some people in the same classroom in the class, some people on Zoom. This is happening right now. And then the future, I think, is something that we're now calling algorithmic instruction. I want to give you a brief glimpse of that today. So for faculty members, I think one of the things to keep in mind is, video assets and in general, digital assets are going to be really, really important, as physical and virtual are going to meld. Even if you're teaching in a physical classroom, bringing in the digital assets and virtual assets will become commonplace. And this is going to change the way faculty will have to work. The second one is a concept that I'm calling algorithm as a professor. I'll just leave it at a very high level here right now, but basically, the future, I believe, and we might be 3 years or 5 years away from this future, but slowly we are starting to see glimpses of this, come alive. And the idea here is that faculty members are going to be involved in designing the algorithms, advising algorithms, and shaping algorithms, but you're going to have, self-contained content that students and learners of all sorts can play with, and they can benefit from it on an ongoing basis. And the faculty member might not even be delivering the content, as we are used to in a lecture format. So this whole idea of an algorithm as a professor and how that changes the role of the professor is something very interesting. Again, continuing with the theme of the changing role of the faculty member, there's another concept that is already happening in all our institutions, which is what we call unbundling of the professor. The professor used to be a solo entrepreneur. This is the same model that we used to have, in the olden days, where the professor did everything. The person designed the instruction, wrote the syllabus, provided the instruction, mentored the students, and assessed learning. Increasingly, what is happening is business schools are getting organized where different teams of people are taking on each of these layers in the stack of activities that the professor needs to complete to do her job or his job. So instructional design is being led by an instructional designer expert team who are very good at designing experiences. Instruction, sometimes from industry leaders, sometimes by performers, sometimes by formally recorded lectures. Student mentorship is going through a different kind of a student success infrastructure. So what is happening is the organizational model that we had of the faculty as a center is now getting to be a decentralized model. And that is going to have long-term implications for how we provide instruction to students. So I wanted to share with you 3 case studies. In case you're not familiar, many of you in the room have already heard of this, but Google has launched free certificates that students can participate in. They can learn at their own pace, and they get a credential from Google that they can then share with their employer. So for example, they have a project management certificate. This is the kind of model that is going to become more and more relevant in the world, and we have to think of ways of responding to this in the most effective way. In some sense, our future competitors are likely to be Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, rather than the other school that is in our region. So what are the implications of that? How is it that we can get smart about this, and thinking about this is something all of us need to engage on. The second one is kind of a very disruptive business school that has started out in the US. It's called Quantic, and they have an autonomous learning system. And this system is essentially using AI ML to create customized learning opportunities. In some sense, it has been very successful. They offer a tuition of $10,000, and average MBA price is between 50 and 100K, depending on the type of institution you're working with. So it's a fairly cheap model, but they're getting huge number of applications, something like 40 to 50,000 applications, and they're accepting very few of those applications. They're only accepting about 3,000 students, and 1 out of 3 students pays in fact 0 tuition. And the students that they're getting have great educations from the best institutions in the world, and they're working for all the tech companies. And so the tech students are particularly interested in these kinds of disruptors, and they are interested in people that are going to shake it up. And then my last example is from the world of chess. Chess.com, has really included now an autonomous learning system where rather than receiving one-on-one instruction at a very high level, what is being done now is each player gets personalized feedback as a result of what it is that they're doing in the game. So the result of that is that, rather than having one size fits all, we're already implementing one size fits one. So I'll give you an example, right here. On the right hand side, you will see the personalized training systems that are in place. So the actual game input is taken in, and out comes some suggestions in terms of how the player can develop, and the player gets a series of lessons that he or she can participate in, and a series of puzzles that he or she can take. So these are the sorts of things that are already happening. So what is happening is, we are used to doing a textbook approach, lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we are going to get a personalized approach. So in closing, I think there are going to be many disruptions, some more exciting than others. Today, I just wanted to give you a glimpse of what's coming. And I'll just invite all of you to think more deeply about the coming technologies and how they're fundamentally going to shift the higher education sector worldwide, in India and elsewhere, and how we have to constantly innovate to incorporate the new capabilities that these technologies are going to bring into our lives. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing, but also welcome you to drop me an email at sandeep@uw.edu. You can also look me up on LinkedIn, and I hope to hear about your perspectives and your ideas, and I wish you the very best in your own journey. Thank you.